Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us from for today's webinar, InfoTrends, our top takeaways from InfoComm 2017. My name is Mandy Joyner, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping details for you. You will all be muted throughout the duration of the webinar. If you have a question, there is a chat feature in the top left-hand corner of your screen. Please feel free to send us questions at any time. We will have an allotted time at the end of the webinar to go through those questions. Also, if you have to adjust any of your settings, you'll see a cog next to your little chat bubble. Please use that to adjust your audio or any other settings that you might need to for the webinar. This webinar is being recorded. So if you've come in later, you have to leave early, do not worry. We will send out the recording to all of the attendees as well as to all of those who have registered after the webinar is final today. And with that, I would like to introduce our presenter, Mike Peterson. Mike Peterson is an expert in developing visualization, simulation, and audiovisual technology solutions while incorporating professional-grade audio, video, projection control, and computer graphic systems. Mike currently serves as a solutions engineer at Mechdyne. He interacts extensively with our clients to understand their needs and problems to develop creative and unique solutions. Mike has over 20 years of engineering experience, including 18 years in advanced visualization, and he has served as an adjunct faculty with InfoComm University. Mike holds both CTSD and CTSI certifications. Mike, thank you so much for being our presenter today.
Thank you, Mandy. And thank you, everyone, for joining. We're excited to share some of our favorite trends that we noticed from the InfoComm trade show. Before we get started, just a quick note. We want to talk just briefly about vendor neutrality. So we just wanted to state that Mechdyne remains vendor neutral. So what vendor neutrality means for us is that we tend to keep multiple vendors for any particular technology. So for projectors, for example, we don't only work with a single projector manufacturer. We work with several different ones. What this allows us to do is, as we work with our clients and we understand their needs and their workflows, we can choose a very specific product to exactly meet their needs and specific requirements. We call that the right tool for the job. So throughout this presentation, of course, being a trade show overview, we're going to be mentioning various specific manufacturers and model numbers, but just wanted to make sure that you understand that just because the product is mentioned in this particular presentation doesn't necessarily mean that it's our recommendation from Mechdyne, unless, of course, I specifically say so. So let's get started. Let's go to start with some basics of the InfoComm trade show. So if we just look at the show at a glance, the InfoComm trade show is kind of promoted and sponsored by InfoComm International. Certainly they're a leading organization to support the audiovisual industry. It was held June 10th through the 16th. It was in Orlando, Florida this past year. There were over 950 exhibitors, and it covered over 545,000 square feet. And this was the trade show floor as well as some demo rooms and some meeting rooms, so a very large area covered. There were over 44,000 attendees. Now, this is about 14% more than 2016. Now, if you've noted any trends of the InfoComm show in the past, the West Coast shows, normally held in Las Vegas, tend to be a little bigger than the East Coast shows. And so it's very intriguing to see this is an East Coast year was a little bit bigger yet than last year. And so that's kind of a double trend there. We had attendees from 50 different states this year and 117 countries. So about 17% of the attendees were international attendees. Over 3,700 attendees took classes of some sort, so a lot of education was occurring at the trade show floor. And these last two are very intriguing to us at Mechdyne. About 41% of the attendees were either technology managers or end users. So a lot of end user interaction at the trade show floor this year. And about 39% of the attendees were first-time attendees. These are both very exciting trends for us at Mechdyne, and we think that this could have some good things for the trade show moving forward. So let's talk about our 5 takeaways that we had from InfoComm 2017. Now, certainly there could be a large number of takeaways. These would not necessarily be the only takeaways someone could take away from the trade show, but these were things that we certainly thought had a very big presence or a theme emerging at the trade show this year. So we're gonna talk about networked AV, and then we're gonna talk about various collaboration tools, products that would help enable employee or teammate collaboration. We're going to talk about direct view LED displays, and then we're going to talk about the continued trend towards solid state projection technologies. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about experiential AV that is more exciting and can create very interesting and engaging experiences for people. So let's go ahead and start with networked AV. So networked AV continues to mature. This technology set is also known commonly as AV over IP. So that's, lots of acronyms there. IP is short for Internet Protocol. It essentially refers to packetized data distribution via computer networks. It's essentially AV taking advantage of the networks that you're very familiar with using on your computers. It basically consists of audio, video, and control being routed and shared and transmitted over these traditional computer-type networks. There are many things about networked AV that make it very appealing both to integrators as well as to the end users. So let's talk about a few of those things. Flexibility. When you think of flexibility, it means it can be used in a lot of different scenarios. So networked AV certainly falls into that. It can be used for very small systems. It can be as much as just a couple of different components that you connect together via a network cable, or it could be all the way up to a full building with dozens of rooms all fully interconnected via network system. We think networked AV is very, very flexible in that way. Now, expandability, it kind of goes hand in hand with flexibility in many ways, but once you've installed a networked AV system, it's very easy to expand it. It's just simply a matter of adding additional network ports and then the various AV-enabled or network-enabled AV components as needed to expand the system. So it really makes it easy to expand the system once you've started. Another thing that we like about networked AV, and I think the end users also like, is that we find that you're beginning to work with the IT department and not against the IT department. Certainly, it's been a trend over the last few years that the IT departments and enterprises have taken a much more leading role in both providing and maintaining audiovisual systems in the various enterprises. And as we begin to have more products that are network-based products, now we're talking about products that the IT department, they're very comfortable with, they're very familiar with, they're using protocols and security type apparatus that are very familiar to the IT department. And so I think that we're finding that the networked AV allows IT departments to actually become very much more comfortable with what we're trying to do from an AV side. The other thing we like about networked AV is that it can leverage existing infrastructure. So oftentimes there's existing network cabling already in place in a building or throughout a room, as well as there might be unused network switch ports that are already existing in a space. And one of the things that you might be able to do is leverage some of that already paid for and installed infrastructure if you're using networked AV. And networked AV continues to be more appealing as the various technologies continue to expand. Certainly enabling technologies such as Power over Ethernet make it more interesting, particularly to us as an integrator. So what Power over Ethernet does is it allows remote AV components to be powered directly over the network cable that they're receiving. So you don't have to go and work with your electrical contractor or your building construction team to install network outlets exactly where you need them everywhere. Instead, hey, if you're going to mount that camera, you can just mount it where you need it. Just make sure you have a network cable to that camera and the camera itself is actually powered over the network cable. You don't have to worry about where that power comes from. So those types of things make installation very easy and really make networked AV appealing. So let's talk about video over IP. So we're going to talk about video, audio, and control. We're going to start with video here. Certainly video over IP is starting to become ubiquitous at the trade show floor. We are seeing a lot more of the products now able to utilize traditional and just normal everyday network switches. For a while, there was certainly some of the protocols that required specialized network switches, and we're seeing a lot more products on the trade show floor that can use just any network switch out there. We're starting to see video over IP creep into all areas of the video ecosystem. We talk about inputs and outputs. We certainly see a lot of wall plates that are direct video input to IP. Several manufacturers had those types of products out there. For example, cameras also as a kind of an entry point as an input or going straight to IP. Now on the output side, I wouldn't say that we saw a tremendous number of displays or projectors that were built ready with video over IP inputs, but I think that's going to be a growing trend that we're going to see. We saw a couple of them, but really it's something that we're going to see a lot more of, we believe, in the coming future. Now, as we think about what processing of the video might occur in between the inputs and outputs, that's very interesting too, because theoretically, once you have it on the network, it's very easy to input that video stream into a computer, allow the computer or some device to process that, and then to output that back out as a video stream on the network as well. So one example of this that we've seen a couple years now is the Evertz 3067 VIP 10G. This is a video wall processor. Now, traditionally, video wall processors, they're large devices. They have a large number of traditional AV video inputs, HDMI inputs, or DVI or DisplayPort inputs. And then they have a similar number of very large count of traditional AV connector outputs. Now, this particular product from Evertz is all network-based. So all the video input streams are all just network ports, and all the video output streams to the displays are also all network. So all the inputs and output ports on the backside of that device are all just network, and yet it's serving as a traditional device in an AV network as a video wall processor. You know, one of the buzzwords for video over IP this year was 4K 60 444. Now, no, we're not going to unpack that in detail right now. You might look forward. We're considering doing a webinar soon, just all about networked AV. So we might expand on that a little bit at that time. But needless to say, what that means is a very high bandwidth video signal. And that's one of the things that was intriguing this year. We saw a lot of new options just in general for video over IP. There's just a handful of them. Again, this is just a short number of the very large number that we saw out there on the trade show floor. But certainly Crestron was promoting their NVX product. They added the 4K 60 capability this year. Christie was showing their Terra product. We saw a product from Kramer. Lightware showing their UBEX product. DVI Gear was showing their new display net. And these new products are joining some existing options in the video over IP world. Certainly the SBSI line of products, which is AMX and Harman now, continues to grow. And ClearOne had already been showing their View Pro a year or two back now. So let's move to audio. As we think about video or audio over IP, Dante wins. So we can certainly say that in the battle of the protocols for audio over network, Dante is the clear winner. AVB or TSN certainly has struggled to gain a sizable market share, and Dante did not at this point. If you were in the audio pavilion at the trade show and you were a reseller of products and you did not have a Dante Spoken Here sign up in your booth, you were on the small side of things. So certainly a majority of the any of the audio products were Dante enabled for IP products. So here's just a few of the Dante enabled products that we saw. Certainly Audio-Technica was showing Dante enabled microphones. So the picture on the top right there's a couple of ceiling microphones, and to enable those microphones, all you need is a network connection. So it's a network cable running off your network switch. They're power over Ethernet enabled, and so those are just hang those from the ceiling, connect the network cable to them, and you're off and running. So there were numerous manufacturers with Dante input and output wall plates, including Aterotech and RDL, were both showing very simple I/O plates for Dante audio. There were some ceiling speakers from SoundTube. I don't think these were new this year. I'm pretty sure they'd been shown last year, but certainly was an example of something on the trade show floor. It's a ceiling speaker. You hook up a network cable to it. It's power over Ethernet. And in fact, it has some expansion ports on it, so you can actually then daisy chain this off to a few other speakers. It really makes for easy installation of some ceiling speakers there. Shure, has had their MXA and MXW microphones now for a year or two that were also Dante enabled. So a number of Dante enabled products. And again, this is simply a handful of the myriad of Dante enabled products on this trade show floor. So as we think of network AV control, now certainly this was the first realm of the audiovisual world that IP networks certainly made an inroads to. For a number of years now, a majority of the control of various AV products has been network-based. So this is not a new trend on the control side, but certainly it continues to grow and mature, and we're seeing a lot more players in the market. Now, some things that were very interesting to us is just some of the manufacturers that were starting to offer control solutions that were network-based. And these are non-traditional control system manufacturers. So you look at QSC and Clear One, both traditional audio companies, and they are now trying to throw their hat in the ring on the control side as well. So the picture on the top right is the touch panel from QSC. On the bottom right, that's a touch panel from Clear One. So certainly some non-traditional players trying to make a name for themselves in the network AV control. And even Cisco, this has been a number of years now, but their last professional codec, the MX80, had a control panel associated to it, and it even had some limited ability to control other products in the room. So let's move on. The second trend that we saw was collaboration technologies. When you think collaboration technologies, certainly the biggest trend for a couple of years now has been the growth of use of software-based codecs. So it's a software-based codec might sound like a fancy name, but you're very familiar with it. I'm sure all of you. Just look at those logos on the screen there, and you'll have been using some sort of software-based collaboration tool or codec. You think Skype for Business or Google Hangouts. You have Cisco Spark or WebEx, GoToMeeting. Those are some of the older players, and you have some upstart players trying to get in. You think Zoom or Pexip. And then, there's other upstart players starting to at least make some buzz, and these are big players. So you think Amazon. Amazon earlier this year announced a product called Chime. That would be a enterprise-grade kind of collaboration communication product that would be designed pretty specifically to compete with Skype for Business. And then, while not formally announced yet, there's been rumors just over the last month or so of a product called Anytime by Amazon. And theoretically, that would be more of their consumer-based product that would maybe compete more with Messenger from Facebook or some other consumer-grade products there. So, and Amazon certainly has a lot of weight behind them. If you were paying attention, at least very briefly earlier last week, Jeff Bezos, the CEO and founder of Amazon, became the richest person in the world. So you think Microsoft, he's currently the richest person in the world, and Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he's number 2, and those are the 2 products that you see up on the screen right there, Skype for Business and Amazon. So Big competitors, a lot of money behind them, so it'll be curious to see what all comes of that. For the time being, however, Skype for Business is clearly the solution of choice. One of the key phrases of the show was Skype for Business. You saw it on a lot of different booths, on a lot of different products. A lot of people were touting their capability to integrate with Skype for Business. In fact, there were dozens of products that were designed apparently very specifically for Skype for Business as a platform. You think of the Mercury product from Crestron. That's the product on the bottom right there. That was a new thing that they have been announcing. AMX was announcing their Sendo line of products that were certainly designed well for Skype for Business, and dozens of others as well. So Skype for Business clearly the solution of choice right now as you think of software-based collaboration tools. Now, if you want to take your software-based collaboration tool and integrate it neatly to your AV system in your room, one of the products that does that well is what we call a USB bridge. This is essentially a product, as you connect the USB port to your computer, the computer simply sees it as a plug-and-play webcam, microphone, and speakers. But on the back end, what it's actually being connected to is a really nice professionally installed AV system, a really pro high-end pan-tilt zoom camera mounted on the wall, some really nice ceiling speakers, some microphones of some sort, pro AV mics with some really good echo canceling behind them. So really that's what you're looking at. So there's certainly a number of players on the market now with what we would consider these USB bridges. You think QSC, they have an I/O USB bridge. They announced that last year. That certainly does audio, but also supports the QSC cameras. Currently just their cameras, but certainly something to look forward for. Biamp to Sierra Forte products, that's an audio-only product, but that product's had a USB port on it now since its introduction. A new product this year was the Vadio AV Bridge Matrix Mix. It's actually just an expansion of a line of products Vadio had to do this AV bridging. That's the picture on the bottom right you see there with the circle highlighting the USB port, which is what makes all the magic go. You know, and while Exxon has made a strategic decision a number of years back to not attend the InfoComm trade show, we'd be remiss to not mention the Extron MediaPort 200, as that's certainly our personal go-to product right now for a USB bridge here at MechDine. Some other things we think about as we think about enabling collaboration, certainly bring your own device support. So BYOD essentially means support for devices that you might bring. So your personal phone, your personal tablet of some sort. There are a lot of products on the market now that are used to support BYOD display and connection to professional AV systems. You think Barco ClickShare, they've been around for a number of years. They continue to expand on their technology. They had their most powerful unit yet. They were showing at the trade show floor this year. You think Immersive Solstice. We're currently working with a large university client, and they've decided to use Immersive Solstice as their enterprise-wide solution for BYOD. So we're getting them very familiar with the Immersive Solstice product because of that contract. Vivitech Nova Connect, that was a new product this year. And then Prism Go seemed to be more of a software-based enabler for BYOD, but also an interesting product this year. Another thing that we think about when we think about collaboration enabling tools would be touchscreen systems. Now, certainly the bottom of the list there, the Microsoft Surface Hub, they were kind of the player that started this trend toward all-in-one collaborative tools built into a touchscreen system. But lots of people have certainly begun to follow suit. You think of the Cisco SparkBoard was announced this year, so that's kind of Cisco's entry into the field. The Newline Interactive, that's the display that's shown there on the left. That would be another line of products that has been very popular lately for this type of thing. Vivitech, to kind of go along with the Nova Connect, had announced their Vivitech Nova Touch, which is a touchscreen system to do a lot of collaboration enablement. Other things we see as far as collaboration goes, huddle room solutions. Now, huddle rooms are certainly a growing trend in enterprises, especially as they look to build new buildings or to renovate existing buildings. You're seeing a lot more of these huddle rooms being built. Huddle rooms are very small spaces, normally designed for 2 to 4 people. It's designed to allow impromptu collaboration opportunities for the employees of that enterprise. So there are certainly a number of solutions that were being displayed on the trade show floor that were specifically designed to help these small huddle rooms enable some collaboration. So we talked about the Crestron Mercury product already. AMX, their Ascendo Vibe product, that's the product on top there. It's a sound bar with some speakers and some built-in microphones, but it's using technology from Harman, right? So it's JBL speaker technology, it might be some AKG mic technology, and along with the camera that you see on top. So that's an interesting product. Now, I will unfortunately did not get a chance to visit this booth, but it just intrigued me greatly that there was actually a company called Huddle Room Technology. To me, this is an indicator of the interest in these huddle rooms and the trend that you're going to see toward more of these huddle rooms, that there's a company that actually came up with the name Huddle Room Technology to focus on that very market. Finally, the Logitech Meetup was another new product. That's the product on the bottom on the left there. It was another product that was designed to support these huddle rooms. Finally, in the collaboration side, we saw some classroom solutions. So this is an interesting new trend. Certainly, you'd think in collaboration between students and teachers and even remote collaboration of students would all be interesting trends. We saw a couple of products that are beginning to target that market and enable some things for them. We saw the Barco WeConnect product, and we saw the Sony Vision Exchange product. Again, products, certainly could have some impact in the corporate market, but really quite clearly designed for the educational market to allow students and teacher interaction and collaboration. So we're excited to see that trend as well. Next, we're going to talk about DirectView LED displays. So DirectView LEDs, very familiar display technology, it's been around for a while. It's essentially an array of light-emitting diodes. If you take a red, green, and blue diode and put them very close together, you can create essentially a pixel, and then you can create arrays of these color pixels to create moving display images. It's been very common for a number of years now for outdoor displays, probably 20 years or more now as an outdoor display type. Very common in large sporting stadiums and arenas. You see them outside casinos, even a growth of electronic billboards that you might see out and about that are based upon these DirectView LED technology. The growth for indoor use is certainly growing. That's been a trend lately, and that's the trend that excites us the most, certainly in the Pro AV side. And that's certainly a lot of what we saw at the trade show floor was the growing number of indoor-ready DirectView LEDs. So one of the things that was very intriguing about the growth of the number of DirectView LEDs, well, first of all, there were just a lot of them on the trade show floor. You could not go very far in any direction on the trade show floor and not run into some manufacturer demonstrating a DirectView LED display in their booth. Now, what's intriguing to us is that most of the major projector manufacturers were actually showing DirectView LED in their booths. So you think Barco and Christie and Digital Projection, Sony and NEC and Samsung, these have been the mainstay, particularly on the high end of the projector market. These have been the mainstay brands for a long time. And each of them was showing a DirectView LED product of some sort in their booth. So certainly we think projector manufacturers are seeing this as a trend and perhaps taking a small bite out of their projector market, and so they want to get into this market. And while we've got these projector manufacturers entering in, they're certainly joining a lot of known DirectView LED manufacturers. These would be manufacturers that have been targeting in traditionally were direct-view LED manufacturers, and they're continuing to gain awareness in the Pro AV market. So we think companies like Layered and Planar, Silicon Core, Nanolumens, Absen, and Unilumen certainly were making a splash on the trade show floor as well this year. One of the trends in direct-view LED each year is that the pixel pitches keep getting smaller. So the pixel pitch is essentially the size of each individual pixel in a direct-view LED display. It's measured by the distance from the center of one pixel to the next in millimeters. So Layered was showing a prototype 0.7 millimeter display on the trade show floor. That certainly would be one of the smallest in the industry. Again, that was not a commercially available product yet, just a prototype product, but it's showing the trends that we're seeing. So you might be asking, so what? So what does it matter that the pixel pitches keep getting smaller? Well, as a rule of thumb, the smaller the pixels, the better a display is for up-close viewing. So if the pixel is too big, that display is really only good for viewing from a long distance away. So there's a rule of thumb in the direct-view LED market that goes like this. The minimum viewing distance in feet is approximately equal to the pixel pitch in millimeters times 10. So let's unpack that a second, give an example. So if you had a 1.2 millimeter pitch direct-view LED, that would have a preferred minimum viewing distance of 12 feet. Essentially what they're saying is if you get much closer than 12 feet to a 1.2 millimeter pitch display, you're going to begin to see the individual pixels themselves. It's going to start to look a little pixelated. It's not going to look like a nice, smooth, continuous image. Now, if you're like me, I'm an engineer, so if you're like me, you might want to get a little more scientific than a rule of thumb. Let's unpack the science behind that just a little bit. So scientifically, doctors would say that the visual acuity of a human with perfect vision is approximately the ability to see something that subtends 1 arc minute. So this comes out of the eye chart that you may have seen very commonly when you go to your eye doctor visit. That chart's called a Snellen chart. And if you think of the E in that Snellen chart, what they would say is you can differentiate the E if you have perfect vision when the E subtends 5 arc minutes. Now, if you think of the 3 horizontal bars and the 2 open horizontal gaps in the letter E that you see there, you can think of each of those as subtending 1 arc minute. So you'd have 3 bars and 2 gaps equals 5. So if that letter E subtends 5 arc minutes, then the smallest portion of the E that you can visually see would be 1 arc minute. So this is part of where this kind of general science of 1 arc minute comes from. So let's look at a chart here, and let's begin to compare direct-view LED pixel pitches with some traditional projector or direct LCD display technologies. So at the top there, if you think of a full HD projector on a 10-foot wide screen, that's going to give you a pixel pitch of about 1.59 millimeters. So the rule of thumb, if you take that times 10, you get about 15.9 feet will be about the minimum viewing distance. If you do the math and the trigonometry and you think of a 1 arc minute, that gives you a viewing distance of about 18 feet or so. Now I'm not going to focus on the 1 arc minute much on this chart because again that's for someone with perfect vision, and if you're like me, you don't have perfect vision anymore. So we're gonna focus more on the rule of thumb because I think it's more realistic to day-to-day individuals. So as you look down the chart, then that 10-foot wide screen, full HD, while a direct-view LED of 1.5 pitch would be about equivalent to that same projector screen. As you look down, if you want to put that on an 8-foot screen, you get about 1.27 millimeters. So that gets very equivalent to a 1.2 millimeter pitch direct-view LED. And then moving on down to the bottom, you can kind of read as you go. But if you get to the finest pitches, if you look at a 70-inch full HD direct LCD display technology, so that'd be the flat panel you have at your house, or you might have a number of those 70-inch LCD displays hanging around your office. They would have a pixel pitch of about 0.81 millimeters. And then you compare that to kind of the range of pixel pitches in direct view LED. 0.9 or 0.95 is about the best commercially available on the market today. So that's just a little bit bigger pixels than the 70-inch. But if you think of the direct view LED display that planar and layered were showing as a prototype, the 0.7, that would certainly be a little bit smaller pixel size than the 70-inch full HD LCD display. So as you can see, as the pixel pitch gets smaller and the direct view LEDs are going to be able to be more competitive, at least from a technical perspective, with much smaller displays as they go. So some other trends in direct view LED that we're continuing to see, prices continue to fall. So this is a trend as we've kind of noticed it at Mechdyne here. It seems like the best pixel pitch falls about 10 to 20% as soon as it becomes the second best pixel pitch. So for example, there was a time where 1.5 millimeters was about the best you could get as a pixel pitch on the market. And as soon as 1.2 millimeters became readily available, all of a sudden the 1.5, that falls about 10 to 20%. So that's an example. So as soon as the best pixel pitch becomes the second best, that price falls about 10 to 20%. So, and as the pixel pitches continue to get smaller and smaller, you're seeing the downward price pressure on direct view LED displays. Now, if you were to ask our personal opinion on what's the best direct view LED display, certainly we would have to say the Sony Crystal LED display is certainly the best on the trade show floor. It just looks gorgeous. There was always a large crowd in front of that display to take a peek at it. Now, what's real exciting for us is that they've been showing that product for a number of years, but they've seemed to have struggled with a go-to-market strategy to match it. And now it appears, at least at first glance, and we're excited to see that they might actually have a go-to-market strategy that's as good as the product itself. So we're looking forward to seeing some Crystal LED sales growth throughout the marketplace in the AV industry. So moving on, the next trend that we want to talk about is the solid-state projection technology trend. So solid-state projectors do not use traditional lamps. Instead, they use either super bright LEDs or lasers to produce the light to create the image. One of the most common ones is called laser phosphor. And what this does is it takes a spinning disc that's covered in phosphors, and it energizes that spinning phosphor disc with a laser. And what happens is then that the phosphors are energized and they glow very brightly. So you get a bright phosphor glow. And it's actually this very brightly glowing spinning disc, which actually is the light source for that projector in that case. So what's exciting about solid-state projectors is that they have a maintenance-free lifetime of 20,000 hours or more. You might actually see them all the way up to 40 or 50,000 hours of life. Now, if we just look at 20,000 hours, though, if the product's used for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 50 weeks a year, that's about 10 years of life at 20,000 hours. So if you can imagine a projector, you don't really have to touch it, maintain it, or do anything to it for 10 years of daily use. Now, that becomes a very interesting product to a lot of people. So there's no lamp changes. That certainly means less user headaches. There's no room downtime to change the lamp. And especially if you have multiple projectors all blended together, if you have to change the lamps, now you have to do color balancing again for all those projectors. You have to do a realignment for physical alignment for those blended projectors. So no lamp changes is a big benefit to the industry. Continue to see more and more projectors and a higher percentage of the projectors on the trade show floor and InfoComm being solid-state based projectors. There's just a handful here that we list, but there's a wide range of projectors listed here. So you've got very huge projectors. So there's in the top right, that's the digital projection Insight dual laser projector. That's like a 27,000 lumen projector. It weighs a couple 100 pounds or more. It's like 48 inches almost with lens in the one direction. So this is a very large projector. Then you look at the bottom projector there on the image. Now this is the Vivitech QME Q8. This was new this year on the trade show floor. And this is a 1,000 lumen full 1080p projector, but it weighs about 1.5 pounds, and it's somewhere in the range of like 10 inches by 7 or 8 inches by 2 inches in size. So this is literally a hand size or pocket size projector, and but with some power behind it, 1,000 lumens and full 1080p. So, we have a very wide range. You have ultra short throw projectors, you have projectors designed for corporate, you have projectors designed for the educational market. So it's still a wide range of projectors out there and growing with solid state projection technology behind it. So this begs the question, what about the future of projection? We talked about direct view LED, and then we've talked about solid state projector technologies. So what's the future hold here? Well, in our personal opinion, we think projection remains relevant and valid for now. The precipitous decline in projection has been postponed greatly by the advent of solid state projection technologies. Now, however, large LCD flat panel prices do continue to fall, but we think that price falling has slowed a little bit, and direct view LED continues to improve and get more cost effective. So there's certainly still pressure on the projector market, and that's why certainly it was obvious that the projector manufacturers were sensing that, because they were showing direct view LED in their booths as a manufacturer. But projection is still valid. So where is projection still valid? Well, today, certainly, if you needed a cost-effective image that was 90 inches or bigger, certainly projectors would be a good selection yet for that, especially with the solid-state projection technology. So in the future, I do think that you're going to see a lot fewer projectors in general corporate and education as flat panels and direct view LED continue to grow and lower in price. But projectors will be around for a very long time, but largely we think for special uses moving forward. So this is like projection mapping or projecting down onto sporting surfaces, something that can't actually be a display technology itself, like a wooden basketball floor. Even cinema, we think, is eventually going to go from projectors. There was a major manufacturer that within the last year or so was announcing a direct view LED type product targeted toward the cinema market. So we believe that even cinema as a trend is going to be going away from projectors over the next 5 years or so. You're going to start to see more new cinema being built with direct view LED displays. Finally, we're going to talk about experiential AV. So what we want to do as an industry is ask the question, okay, how can AV be used in more than just as a business or educational tool? We want to find AV that can be truly creative, innovative, can really grasp the attention of a client or a customer and draw them in. So we saw a lot of different types of experiential AV on the trade show floor. NEC had a virtual aquarium in their booth, you see there. As a little trivia point, this was a little bit of nostalgia for us at Mechdyne, because we actually installed an immersive virtual aquarium way back in Taiwan in 2001. So that was kind of a way back machine for us to see NEC with their virtual aquarium in their booth. Now, if you know much about Mechdyne, certainly we've grown up out of virtual reality. It certainly has been a very strong capability of ours from the beginning, and we're very excited about that technology. So we're a little biased perhaps in this next statement, but we certainly saw less virtual reality and augmented reality on the trade show floor than we would have expected. There's still a kind of a buzz about AR and VR, and we saw much less than we would have expected. So now we think one of the reasons that is that really good virtual reality requires hard-to-find stereoscopic displays. So if you think back 3-4 years ago, there was a tremendous splash of 3D displays. Every manufacturer was showing their 3D displays. There'd been a couple of really blockbuster Hollywood movies released that were in 3D that had gotten a lot of buzz. So there was this trend, and everyone was going to have a 3D display in their home, and it was going to be this huge market, and everybody was making one. Well, that's pretty much all evaporated at this point. It's become actually really hard, especially on the flat panel side, to find 3D enabled flat panels on the commercial market. In fact, we're kind of down to just a few. You know, our go-to right now is the Planar Matrix 3D product as a 3D enabled flat panel. But it's a dearth of products out there right now. Now there's certainly a few more options for 3D projectors, certainly on the high end of the projectors. There's a few more options, but even then, we're starting to see a trend toward more projectors being released without any form of 3D capability built into them. And so all this is going to make it hard to do some quality VR, at least on a large scale, without using a head-mounted display or goggle type solution for virtual reality. Another thing that we saw on the trade show floor that was very experiential were dome displays. So that on the top left there, that was actually the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Their College of Journalism had actually brought this portable dome display and were showing some of their student projects in that. So we thought that was very creative. On the center there, kind of center bottom, that was the Panasonic booth. They were showing a cool full dome solution in there in the Panasonic with some Panasonic products and some spherical lenses. And then on the right there, that was the Canon booth. And they were certainly showing some interesting full dome solution there in the Canon booth. So just take a quick glance at this picture. This was actually in the planar layered booth. So if you take a quick glance at this picture, it certainly may appear to many of you that I'm standing on a stair up a couple of steps on a ship, on a railing. But if we add a couple lines in place to give you some perspective here, so the red lines actually represent where the various screens are breaking. And so the top left of that picture now would be a side screen to your left, and then the top right portion of that would be a side screen to your right, and then the whole bottom portion of that was actually a direct view LED floor that you were stepping on. So as you look carefully where my feet are, I'm actually physically standing on a floor at the same level as the guy to my left. But it certainly would have appeared at first glance that I was standing up a couple of steps. And that's the power of perspective. And there are a few products on the trade show floor that were kind of doing some creative things with perspective. And you could certainly create some engaging experiences with these false perspective type products. Projection mapping is certainly another trend that we saw as far as experiential AV. It's been on the trade show floor for a number of years. We actually expect to see it grow as projector manufacturers are trying to show places and interesting ways to use their projectors in non-traditional ways. So Panasonic, and I really regret I didn't get a video or a picture of this, but they were doing projection mapping on individuals. So they had a dancer or a martial arts expert, and they were tracking this person's position in real time on a stage, and they were projection mapping onto this person's body as they moved and danced. And it was really, really creative and clever. Casio, in their booth, they had a table full of their projectors, and then they were projection mapping onto this table of projectors. And then using the projection mapping, they would highlight one of their projectors, and they would show relevant technical information about that projector. So that was very creative. Christie Digital was showing what you might do for projection mapping down onto a basketball court. So that was some creative thing. Optima, with their globe, they were having projection mapping onto a globe interior, and also a very cool virtual table setting. And then the two pictures that you see on the right there, this was actually in the Epson booth, and they were actually had a screen there that they were deforming in real time. So it's a little hard to tell, but that screen is actually, physically, there's some bump outs, and it's kind of not a nice, smooth screen surface. And they were actually able to deform that screen in various ways in real time. And then the projectors were actually capturing the screen deformations and were auto-correcting their projection mapping in real time to whatever deformation that screen had in place. So that was a very creative demonstration as well. Now, I talked about the Optimum booth. I was very entranced personally by this little demonstration. I thought it was very cute and very clever. So this is a table setting that you see there. And what appears to be menus are actually blank sheets of paper. So it's a book. There's actually a physical book there, but it actually has just plain white sheets of paper. And what they're doing is they're projection mapping down onto this table surface. And the menus themselves are all projection pages. And you see the little chef there, and he was very active and engaged, and he was moving about and doing various things. It was very, very creative. So as we look at this, here's another picture of that. Now, what they did here is they did the content very well. So as you think through what it might look like on a table to have projectors above it, anything on the table is going to cast a shadow. So the glasses are actually physical glasses. That candle there is a physical candle. And you see the shadows that those physical objects are actually casting onto the table. Well, what they did was when they created the projected little guy or the projected pages, they're casting shadows as well. So this is a picture of what appeared to be a page turn in the menu. Well, there's no physical pages actually turned. It just is all done with projection mapping. But with the shadows they have in place, that looks like this page is up and above and casting shadow as it turns. It was super creative, and it made a very realistic experience. And so this was just a very creative use of projection mapping, in our opinion. Another thing we saw was some tools on the trade show floor that were designed for experiential AV. So a company called Float4 had a product called Real Motion. D3 Technologies was another company. They both had software suites there that were designed to help people create very creative experiential experiences. That's kind of redundant. Anyway, so for example, they might support the creation of fluid flow or particle fields of various types, and then you can be very interactive with them. So you could either use a touch screen or some sort of proximity sensor. As you get close, the particles would move and flow. And what they did was they actually create you've seen this a lot. You've seen this type of experience at an airport perhaps, but there's a lot of custom programming normally that goes behind that. And what these companies have done is they've actually created a platform to make the programming of that very easy. Easy to change, easy to add things to it. And so that's what's very intriguing about these companies is that they've made that much easier to do. So their products support projection mapping, it supports video sequencing, and it supports very interactive designs. Now, as a bonus trend, this certainly isn't one of our big 5 trends, but another thing that we saw that really captured our attention on the trade show floor, there were a couple of products, at least that we saw on the trade show floor, that were enabled with IBM Watson technology. Now, if you're not familiar with IBM Watson, it's IBM's big data and deep computing and artificial intelligence platform. It's cloud-based now. It gained a lot of fame back in the day. It was started as a project called Deep Blue. Then as Watson, it became famous on the show Jeopardy when it pretty soundly trounced the all-time Jeopardy champion human in a Jeopardy game. So Harman and Rico were both showing Watson-enabled AV products in their booths. Primarily, I think they were using the natural language API aspect of IBM Watson to do natural language processing, to understand what control commands someone might be asking for. I think they were going a little further than that, but I think you could go a lot further. And I think you're going to expect to see some very real interesting automation, especially projects coming and products that might enable things like IBM Watson to help you. So as you think through some learning products that already exist in your home, if you have a Nest learning thermostat, it kind of learns what you like as far as the temperatures go. let's think about what we could do to apply this deep learning artificial intelligence to AV system control and automation. It might learn who you are when you walk in the room and what types of settings you like in your AV and how you like your lights set and how you normally would connect. It might know who you are and know that you already have a meeting scheduled in advance. So it might actually automatically dial up the soft codec meeting of choice just because it automatically recognizes you. So lots of capabilities there. And I think stay tuned. I think you're going to see a lot of interesting things coming as deep learning gets implemented into Pro AV. So let's close with a save the date here. So InfoComm 2018. If any of this has intrigued you and you think about attending the show next year, I can give you the dates already. It's June 2nd through the 8th. The trade show floor would be the 6th, 7th, and 8th of 2018. So it's going to be in Las Vegas at the Convention Center. And as always, MECDAN will be there and will be continuing to stay ahead of the industry trends. So with that, we just have a couple minutes left. We can maybe answer a question or two.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. As Mike said, we just have a few moments here. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and type them in the chat feature. It should be in the left-hand corner of your screen. We did have a couple questions come in, so we'll get to what we can. One of the first questions says, we mentioned more of the end users attending the show this year. How do you think this might change the show or industry moving forward?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, and I think there's going to be a lot of thinking put into that. For us personally, I think what you're going to begin to see is perhaps more of the integration firms actually have booth presence at the show. So certainly the big players, the AVI-SPLs of the world, and some others have had trade show booths at the InfoComm floor before. But if you see a lot more end users there, I think you're going to see a lot more of the integrators actually have booths there and trade show floor presence. An unfortunate side effect of that, I'm afraid, is that you're going to begin to see more of the vendors begin to look at direct-to-customer strategies instead of using their integrator partners like us and other integrators. So you might see more vendors looking more heavily at, hey, how might we do a direct-to-the-end-user marketing strategy instead of having a vendor channel. So we hope that doesn't happen, but that would certainly be a trend that you might see from that type.
Okay. And we'll try to do this last question here. We'll sneak it in. Given the nature of proper 4K viewing conditions, large screen sizes, and shorter viewing distances, do you see 4K being adopted for an average classroom use?
That's a good question. To be honest, I personally do not, especially for a classroom use. Just our own experience, we, right here in the conference room that I'm in, it's our main corporate conference room for our company. We have a large, 98-inch 4K display on the end wall of ours. And so that's a big 4K display. And we operate it almost always only in 1080p mode. We very rarely ever actually show things in full 4K resolution. It's just, the pixels become very hard to see, especially for classroom and corporate use. You start throwing up an Excel spreadsheet or something up on that display, and it's really hard to see. So curiously enough, I think you're going to see 4K in home theater. You're going to see it in certainly in movies and other things. But I do not expect to see a lot of 4K in general classrooms or conference rooms in the corporate environment. So.
Great. Thank you. Well, that puts us right at our stopping time. So if we did not get to your question, we will make sure to respond to you individually so you have that answered. Thank you again so much, Mike, and thank you all for attending. This has been recorded, so I will send out the recording tomorrow so you all have that available as well. Have a great day.